The seismic wave. The news of Ruda's election as the new president of Gorillist reverberated through the nation like a seismic wave, shaking the very foundations of its political landscape. For Ruda himself, the announcement was nothing short of a crowning achievement, a culmination of years of unwavering dedication and a testament to his unyielding resolve. As the weight of his new responsibilities settled upon his shoulders, Ruda felt a surge of pride and exhilaration coursing through his veins, mingled with a profound sense of duty to lead his nation through the tumultuous times ahead. The moment the official word reached him, Ruda stood in the hallowed corridors of power, his presence commanding and imposing. He had always been a man of action, but now, with the mantle of leadership firmly in his grasp, he felt a deeper, almost spiritual connection to the destiny of Gorillist. The ceremonial oath-taking ceremony that awaited him was more than just a formality. It was a solemn act that would bind him to the very soul of the nation he was about to lead. As Ruda prepared for the ceremony, his mind was a whirlwind of thoughts. The echoes of jubilation and acclaim that filled the hall served as a backdrop to his contemplation of what lay ahead. The weight of expectations from the people, the parliament, and the military rested heavily on his shoulders. Yet, amidst the gravity of the moment, a deep sense of pride swelled within him. This was the moment he had worked tirelessly for, the culmination of his journey from a young soldier to the highest office in the land. The oath-taking ceremony itself was a moment of solemn reverence, a symbolic gesture that marked the transition of power and ushered in a new era for Gorillist. As Ruda stood before the assembly, his figure tall and resolute, he could feel the collective gaze of the nation upon him. The room was filled with dignitaries, military leaders, and political figures, all of whom had come to witness the historic occasion. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of anticipation, as if the very air was humming with the weight of history being made. With each word of the oath he uttered, Ruda pledged his unwavering commitment to the welfare and prosperity of his nation. His voice, clear and steady, resonated throughout the chamber, captivating all who bore witness. The words were not just a formality, they were a binding contract with the people of Gorillist, a promise that he would lead with integrity, strength, and wisdom. As he concluded the oath, a wave of applause swept through the room, signaling the people's confidence in their new leader. Meanwhile, in the quiet confines of his personal quarters, General Huris found himself overcome with a flood of emotions that threatened to overwhelm his stoic facade. The moment the news of Ruda's ascension reached his ears, he felt a rush of pride and joy unlike anything he had ever experienced. Huris had always been a man of discipline and control, but in that instant, he allowed himself to feel the full weight of his emotions. Tears welled in his eyes as he reflected on the journey that had brought Ruda to this pinnacle of power. Huris had watched Ruda grow from a promising young recruit into a formidable leader, and now, as president, Ruda had surpassed even his highest expectations. This moment was not just a victory for Ruda, it was a triumph for Huris as well, a validation of his unwavering belief in Ruda's potential and the enduring bond they had forged over the years. As he sat in the solitude of his contemplation, General Huris allowed himself to reminisce. The memories of Ruda's journey flashed before his mind's eye like fragments of a cherished tapestry. He recalled the early days of Ruda's training, when the young man had shown an unyielding determination and a natural aptitude for leadership. He remembered the countless battles they had fought side by side, each one testing their resolve and strengthening the bond between them. These memories were not just recollections, they were the building blocks of a relationship that had shaped both of their lives. But amidst the swell of pride and joy, a shadow loomed on the horizon, a lingering sense of unease that gnawed at the edges of Huris's consciousness. Deep within the recesses of his heart, Huris harbored a secret fear, a fear born of the knowledge that with great power came an equally great burden. He knew that the path ahead for Ruda would be fraught with challenges and sacrifices, and he worried about the toll it would take on the young leader. Huris had seen firsthand the pressures that came with leadership, the weight of decisions that could mean the difference between victory and defeat, life and death. As much as he believed in Ruda's capabilities, he could not shake the fear that the immense responsibility now resting on Ruda's shoulders might prove to be too much. But Eurus also knew that there was no turning back. Ruda had been chosen by fate and by the people of Gorillas to lead them through these perilous times, and he would need all the strength and wisdom he could muster. Ruda, for his part, found himself ensconced in the quiet solitude of his chambers, the weight of his newfound responsibilities bearing down upon him like a leaden cloak. The ceremonial trappings of his new office, the flags, the insignia, the ceremonial sword, were all around him, but they did little to alleviate the burden he felt. In the stillness of the hour, his thoughts turned inevitably to Durika, the woman who had captured his heart and whose presence had illuminated his darkest days with a radiant light. Durika had been a constant in Ruda's life, a source of comfort and inspiration. Her beauty, both inner and outer, had always been a beacon of hope for him, a reminder of the goodness and grace that still existed in the world despite the chaos around them. In her, Ruda saw not only a partner but also a kindred spirit, someone who understood him in a way that no one else could. Yet, as much as he admired and cared for her, there was a deep well of unspoken affection that he had never been able to fully express. With a heavy heart, Ruda allowed himself to indulge in the bittersweet reverie of unspoken affection, his mind conjuring images of Durika's ethereal beauty and unwavering grace. But beneath the veneer of his adoration lay a darker truth, a truth tainted by resentment and betrayal. For in the depths of his soul, Ruda harbored a deep-seated animosity towards Kodo, the man who had always seemed to stand in his way, both professionally and personally. Kodo, the son of the late President Natsu, had always been a rival to Ruda, a constant reminder of the path that Ruda had been denied. Though Ruda had risen to power through his own merits, he could not help but feel a lingering bitterness towards Kodo, who had been born into privilege and power. To Ruda, Kodo represented everything that was unjust in the world, a man who had been given everything without having to earn it. As the flickering candlelight cast shadows across the walls, Ruda's thoughts turned to the enigmatic figure of Kodo, his mind consumed by a volatile mixture of envy and disdain. In Kodo, he saw not only a threat to his aspirations, but also a symbol of everything he despised, a reminder of the injustices that had plagued his own path to power. The rivalry between them had always been simmering beneath the surface, and now, with Ruda's election as president, it had come to a head. In that solitary moment, as he grappled with the conflicting emotions swirling within his heart, Ruda made a silent vow, a vow to rise above the petty grievances of the past and to forge ahead with unwavering determination. He knew that the road ahead would be fraught with peril and uncertainty, and that only by embracing the challenges that lay ahead could he hope to emerge victorious in the battle for Gorillast's future. He would not let his personal feelings for Kodo cloud his judgment. He would lead with integrity and strength, just as he had always done. But even as he made this vow, Ruda could not entirely banish the darkness that lingered within him. The resentment towards Kodo was deeply rooted, and it would take all of his self-discipline to keep it in check. As president, Ruda knew that he would be held to a higher standard, and he was determined not to let personal vendettas interfere with his duties. Yet, the bitterness remained, a shadow that threatened to darken his path if he allowed it to take hold. With a heavy sigh, Ruda extinguished the flickering flame of the candle, plunging the room into darkness. The day had been long and filled with emotional highs and lows, and now, as the night closed in, Ruda felt the weight of his responsibilities pressing down on him even more heavily. As he succumbed to the embrace of sleep, his dreams were haunted by visions of a nation in turmoil, its fate hanging precariously in the balance. But amidst the chaos and uncertainty, one thing remained clear, a newfound resolve to lead his people with courage, wisdom, and unwavering resolve. The following morning, Ruda awoke with a renewed sense of purpose. The doubts and fears that had plagued him the night before were still present, but they were tempered by a steely determination to fulfill the role he had been entrusted with. He knew that the coming days would be challenging, and that every decision he made would be scrutinized and debated. But Ruda was ready to face those challenges head-on, confident in his abilities and in the support of those who believed in him. As he prepared for the day ahead, Ruda's thoughts turned once again to General Eurus. Eurus had been more than just a mentor to him. He had been a father figure, guiding him through the trials and tribulations of military life and instilling in him the values of honor, discipline, and duty. Ruda knew that Eurus was proud of him, but he also knew that the general harbored concerns about the path ahead. Huras's concerns were not unfounded. The presidency was a position that required not only strength and resolve, but also wisdom and foresight. Ruda knew that he would need to rely on the counsel of those around him, including Huras, to navigate the complex and often treacherous landscape of politics and governance. The challenges ahead would be unlike anything he had faced before, and he would need all the support and guidance he could get. As the day unfolded, Ruda found himself surrounded by advisors, military leaders, and political figures, all eager to offer their congratulations and their advice. The weight of their expectations was palpable, but Ruda took it in stride. He listened carefully to their counsel, weighing their words against his own instincts and judgment. He knew that the decisions he made in the coming days would set the tone for his presidency and would determine the course of the nation. One of the first tasks on Ruda's agenda was to address the nation. The people of Gorilist were looking to him for leadership, and it was crucial that he reassure them in these uncertain times. Ruda knew that his words would need to be carefully chosen, that they would need to inspire confidence and hope while also conveying the seriousness of the challenges ahead. As he stood before the cameras, ready to deliver his first address as president, Ruda felt a sense of calm wash over him. The doubts and fears that had haunted him the night before were gone, replaced by a clear sense of purpose. He was ready to lead, ready to take on the responsibilities that had been entrusted to him. My fellow citizens, Ruda began, his voice steady and strong. Today marks the beginning of a new chapter in our nation's history. We face challenges that are unprecedented in their scale and complexity, but we also have the strength and resolve to overcome them. As your president, I pledge to lead with integrity, wisdom, and unwavering commitment to the welfare of our nation. Together, we will navigate these difficult times and emerge stronger than ever. The address was met with widespread acclaim. Ruda's words resonated with the people, reassuring them that they were in capable hands. The sense of unease that had gripped the nation in the wake of President Natsu's death began to lift, replaced by a cautious optimism about the future. But even as the nation rallied behind its new leader, Ruda knew that the real work was only just beginning. The challenges ahead were immense, and the path forward was fraught with uncertainty. But Ruda was ready to face those challenges with the same determination and resolve that had brought him to this point. As the days turned into weeks, Ruda settled into his role as president. The initial euphoria of his election began to fade, replaced by the day-to-day realities of governance. But Ruda remained steadfast in his commitment to leading the nation with strength and integrity. He knew that the decisions he made in these early days would set the tone for his presidency and would shape the future of Gorilist. Through it all, Ruda found solace in the knowledge that he was not alone. He had the support of General Huras, whose wisdom and guidance he continued to rely on. He had the admiration of the people, who had placed their trust in him to lead them through these difficult times. And he had the memory of President Natsu, whose legacy he was determined to honor by leading with the same courage and conviction that had defined Natsu's presidency. As the weeks turned into months, Ruda's presidency began to take shape. The challenges he faced were immense, but he tackled them with the same determination and resolve that had characterized his military career. He worked tirelessly to strengthen the nation's defenses, to bolster the economy, and to forge alliances with neighboring countries. Through it all, he remained focused on his ultimate goal, to lead Gorilist through these turbulent times and to secure a brighter future for the nation and its people. And as the nation of Gorilist looked to the future, it did so with a renewed sense of hope and confidence. Under Ruda's leadership, the country was beginning to heal from the wounds of the past and to prepare for the challenges of the future. The journey ahead was still uncertain, but with Ruda at the helm, the people of Gorilist knew that they were in capable hands. For Ruda, the journey was far from over. The challenges ahead were daunting, but he was ready to face them with the same courage and determination that had brought him to the presidency. With the support of his allies, the trust of the people, and the memory of those who had come before him, Ruda was determined to lead Gorilist to a brighter, more prosperous future. The demand for justice. After taking office as Gorilist's president, Ruda knew that his first act as leader had to be one that asserted his authority and reassured the people that he would avenge the death of their beloved President Natsu. The nation had been plunged into grief and uncertainty following Natsu's assassination, and the people were desperate for justice. They looked to Ruda, their new president, to lead them through these turbulent times and to hold those responsible for the heinous crime accountable. Ruda wasted no time in addressing the nation. The weight of his new responsibilities bore down on him, but he embraced it with the resolve and confidence that had defined his military career. He had risen to the highest office in Gorilist, not by chance, but by the sheer force of his determination and his reputation as a strong and capable leader. Now, it was time to prove to the nation that they had made the right choice. The day of his address dawned with a sense of anticipation that gripped the entire nation. The streets of the capital were filled with people eager to hear what their new leader had to say. Flags flew at half-mast in memory of President Natsu, and the somber mood was palpable. Yet, there was also a simmering undercurrent of anger, a desire for retribution that Ruda could feel in the air. The people wanted justice, and they wanted it now. As Ruda stood before the cameras, preparing to address the nation, he took a moment to collect his thoughts. He had carefully crafted his message, knowing that every word he spoke would be scrutinized, not just by the people of Gorilist, but by the entire world. The stakes were high, and the path he chose would set the tone for his presidency and the future of the nation. Ruda began his speech with a solemn acknowledgement of the loss that the nation had suffered. "My fellow citizens," he said, his voice steady and resolute, "we are a nation in mourning. The loss of President Natsu has left a void in our hearts that cannot easily be filled. He was a leader of great vision, courage, and integrity, and his untimely death has left us all reeling. But even as we grieve, we must also look forward. We must honor President Natsu's legacy by ensuring that those responsible for this atrocity are brought to justice." The mention of justice caused a ripple of anticipation among the crowd. Ruda could see the hunger for retribution in their eyes, and he knew that he had to address it head-on. "Today, I stand before you not just as your president, but as a leader who will not rest until justice is served." The assassination of President Natsu was not just an attack on one man, it was an attack on our entire nation, on our values, and on our way of life. And we will not allow such an attack to go unanswered. Ruda's voice grew stronger as he continued, his tone one of unyielding determination. "Our intelligence has confirmed that Jus, the leader of the gang responsible for this despicable act, has sought refuge in Hyanea. This man is a terrorist, a criminal, and an enemy of Gorilist. He must be brought to justice for his role in the assassination of President Natsu. And it is with this in mind that I issue the following demand to the government of Hyanea: hand over Jus to us so that he may be tried and punished for his crimes. If you fail to do so, you will leave us with no choice but to consider this an act of hostility, and we will respond accordingly." The weight of Ruda's words hung in the air, and a murmur of approval swept through the crowd. The demand was clear, direct, and left no room for ambiguity. Ruda had drawn a line in the sand, and the people of Gorilist could feel the strength of their new leader in that moment. He was not a man who would allow his nation to be wronged without consequence. But even as Ruda made his demands, he was acutely aware of the complexities of the situation. Hyanea was a neighboring country with which Gorilist had a tenuous relationship. The political landscape was fraught with tension, and any misstep could lead to open conflict. Ruda knew that his demand could push the two nations to the brink of war, but he also knew that justice for President Natsu required bold action. As Ruda concluded his address, he left the people with a message of unity and strength. "We are a nation united in our grief, but we are also a nation united in our resolve. We will not be intimidated by those who seek to harm us. We will stand strong, and we will see justice done. Together, we will honor the memory of President Natsu and build a future that reflects the values he held dear. I ask for your support as we navigate the challenges ahead, and I pledge to lead with the same courage and determination that have always defined the people of Gorilist." The address was met with widespread acclaim. The people of Gorilist, though still mourning, found solace in Ruda's words. They felt a renewed sense of purpose and a belief that justice would indeed be served. Ruda had shown that he was a leader who would not shy away from difficult decisions, and this reassured the nation. However, even as Guerrillist rallied behind its new leader, the situation in Hyannia was far more complex. Ruda's demand had been clear, but fulfilling it was another matter entirely. In Hyannia, the government was thrown into a state of disarray by the demand from Guerrillist. Jus, the notorious gang leader, had indeed been in their territory, but as soon as word of Ruda's election reached him, Jus had vanished without a trace. The Hyannian government had no idea where he had gone, and this left them in a precarious position. They knew that failing to meet Ruda's demand could have severe consequences, but they were equally aware that they were unable to deliver what had been asked. The leader of Hyannia, President Murray, convened an emergency meeting with his top advisors to discuss the situation. The room was filled with tension as Murray addressed his cabinet. "Gentlemen," Murray began, his voice heavy with concern, "we are in a very dangerous position. The new president of Guerrillist has made it clear that he expects us to hand over Jus, but we have no idea where he is. If we cannot fulfill their demand, we could be facing a war with Guerrillist, a war that we are not prepared for." The ministers exchanged uneasy glances, each of them understanding the gravity of the situation. Hyannia had long been a country plagued by internal strife and economic hardship. The last thing they needed was a conflict with their more powerful neighbor. "Mr. President," one of the advisors spoke up, "we need to buy ourselves some time. We could respond to Ruda's demand by expressing our willingness to cooperate, but we should also make it clear that Jus has disappeared and that we are actively searching for him. This might delay any potential military action and give us a chance to find him before it's too late." Murray nodded thoughtfully. "That could work," he said slowly. "But we must also prepare for the possibility that we won't be able to find him in time. We need to strengthen our defenses and reach out to our allies for support. This situation could escalate very quickly, and we need to be ready for anything." The meeting continued with a flurry of ideas and strategies, but the underlying fear was palpable. Hyannia was in a difficult position, and they knew that Ruda's demand could be the spark that ignited a full-blown conflict. Meanwhile, Jus, the man at the center of this storm, was well aware of the turmoil his presence had caused. From the moment Ruda had taken office, Jus knew that his days in Hyannia were numbered. He had spent years building his criminal empire, moving between borders with ease and eluding capture at every turn. But now, with a newly empowered leader in Guerrillist gunning for him, Jus knew that his usual tactics would no longer suffice. Jus had gone underground, relying on his network of contacts and safe houses to keep him hidden. He knew that both Hyannia and Guerrillist would be searching for him, but he also knew that he had prepared for this moment. He had allies in places that no one suspected, and he was determined to stay one step ahead of his pursuers. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, Jus found himself increasingly isolated. The pressure from Guerrillist had led many of his former associates to abandon him, fearing that they would be caught in the crossfire. His resources were dwindling, and he knew that it was only a matter of time before he would have to make a move either to negotiate his survival or to strike back against those who hunted him. Back in Guerrillist, Ruda's patience was wearing thin. Days had passed since his demand, and there had been no satisfactory response from Hyannia. The initial message from President Murray had expressed a willingness to cooperate, but had also contained the troubling news that Jus had disappeared. Ruda had expected such a tactic, but he was not willing to let it derail his pursuit of justice. In a private meeting with his military advisors, Ruda discussed the next steps. "We cannot allow Hyannia to stall any longer," Ruda said, his tone firm. "They claim that Jus has disappeared, but we know that he has powerful connections there. We must show that we are serious about bringing him to justice, and if that means preparing for military action, then so be it." The military advisors nodded in agreement. They had been preparing for this possibility ever since Ruda had taken office, and they knew that the time for diplomacy was running out. "We should issue a final ultimatum to Hyannia," one of the generals suggested. "Make it clear that if they do not produce Jus within a set time frame, we will take matters into our own hands." Ruda considered the suggestion carefully. He knew that any military action would have significant consequences, not just for Guerrillist and Hyannia, but for the entire region. But he also knew that backing down was not an option. The people of Gorilist were counting on him to deliver justice, and he was determined not to let them down. Very well, Ruda said finally. Issue the ultimatum. They have 1 week to produce just, or we will move forward with our plans. Prepare the military for all contingencies. The ultimatum was sent, and the countdown began. As the days passed, the tension between Gorilist and Hyaenia escalated. Both nations began to mobilize their forces, preparing for the possibility of war. The world watched with bated breath, knowing that the outcome of this standoff could have far-reaching implications. For Ruda, the days leading up to the deadline were filled with a mix of anticipation and resolve. He knew that he had made the right decision, but he also knew that the road ahead would be difficult. The stakes were high, and the future of Gorilist was on the line. But Ruda was ready. He had been chosen to lead in this time of crisis, and he was determined to see it through to the end. As the deadline approached, Hyenia's leadership was in disarray. Despite their efforts, they had been unable to locate Jus, and the pressure from Gorilist was becoming unbearable. President Murray knew that they were running out of time, and the prospect of war loomed ever larger. In a last-ditch effort to avoid conflict, Murray reached out to Ruda, proposing a diplomatic meeting to discuss the situation. But Ruda, sensing that this was yet another delaying tactic, refused. He had given Hyaenia a clear choice: hand over Jus or face the consequences. There would be no further negotiations. On the eve of the deadline, as the clock ticked down, the people of Gorilist waited anxiously for news. The tension was palpable, and everyone knew that the next 24 hours would determine the fate of the nation. In his office, Ruda prepared for what he knew could be the most challenging day of his presidency. He reviewed the military plans, consulted with his advisors, and steeled himself for the decisions he would need to make. The weight of leadership was heavy, but Ruda bore it with the strength and determination that had brought him to this point. As the final hour approached, the ultimatum expired without a word from Hyaenia. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shape the future of both nations. And as the first light of dawn broke over Gorilist, Ruda knew that the time for action had arrived.